A new deadly virus surfaced in 1981. Since then, 25 million people have died, and no single region on the Earth has been spared. In the US, over 1 million people are infected, and more than 25% don't even know it. The disease continues to ravage Africa and is expected to do the same in India, Russia, and China. Last year alone, 3 million people vanished from the face of the planet. And this year, HIV/AIDS will kill even more. All around the world, over 40 million people are infected. 5 million people are infected every year. 14,000 people will become infected today. There is no cure for this deadly virus. It destroys our communities. It destroys our families. Leaving 15 million orphans to fend for themselves. Million children who are without hope. This is the greatest humanitarian crisis in the world. Today, 8,000 people will die. Are you okay with this?
Until about 7 years ago, I'm really embarrassed to say I was okay with that. And in just an instant, my world turned upside down. I was sitting in my living room in my comfortable Orange County home and reading a news magazine, like I did on a weekly basis, and there was this one magazine that had an article on AIDS in Africa, and I was compelled to read it. I didn't care. I didn't read it because I was interested. I didn't read it because I was an advocate. I didn't read it because it mattered to me, but for some reason it captured my attention on that particular day. And as I opened the magazine and began to read about AIDS in Africa, there were these pictures that came along with the article, kind of like a lot of those that you just saw in that, and they were horrific, and they broke my heart, and they just made me sick, and I couldn't look at them, and so I tried to cover my face with my hands like this. This is the same way I watch a horror movie. It's like this, you know. I block out the monster, and I was blocking out the monster and trying to still read the words on this page about AIDS in Africa, and I was doing pretty good at blocking out the pictures, but then there was this little box in the middle of the article, and in that box it said, at that time, 12 million children orphaned in Africa due to AIDS. I threw the magazine down on the ground because as I sat in my comfortable living room in Orange County, I realized I didn't know the name of a single orphan. I didn't know the name of a single person who was HIV positive. And I thought to myself, how could there be 12 million children orphaned anywhere due to anything and it not touch my life in the slightest? And how can there be an illness where at that time they said there were 40 million people who were infected with HIV? How could there be 40 million people in this world with an incurable disease and I don't know a single one of them? What is wrong with me that this does not touch my life? And so that night when I went to bed, all I could think about were the cries of the children whose pictures I had seen in that magazine article, who were dying. All I could think about the next morning when I woke up was I could still hear those cries. I would pick up the newspaper, and it's like for the next 30 days I was haunted. I could not get away from HIV and AIDS. It was on every newscast. There'd be, scrolling along the bottom of the screen, something about AIDS. Every newspaper I'd pick up, every magazine article, it was just like it was everywhere. And I began to get the idea that maybe God was trying to get my attention. And I'm like, back, please go away. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm a white suburban mom with a minivan. What do I know about a disease in Africa? What could I possibly do about that many orphans? God, you've got the wrong person. You better just leave me alone. And after about a month, really, of serious, intense wrestling of this sense that I was supposed to do something about it, and yet feeling completely unqualified, incapable, out of my league. I was a home ec major in college. What does a home ec major in Orange County, what could I possibly do about a crisis this big? And then I realized that I had come to that proverbial fork in the road, those moments that as you look at your life and you look at the decisions ahead of you, you realize I can either go this way or I can go this way. And whichever way I turn is going to affect my life dramatically. And I was at that fork in the road. I could either stuff cotton back in my ears, pretend like I had not read this article, pretend like I had not suddenly seen something that I'd never seen or let into my heart before. I could go about my comfortable life, or I could become engaged with the HIV/AIDS pandemic. And for me, as a Christian, it came down to this. I realized that I was accountable for my life, and that God would hold me accountable for the information that I had just received. And I couldn't really imagine it going very well with me, someday coming face to face with God and him going, yeah, remember that day I showed you that magazine article? What did you do about it? And me go, oh, you meant me? You meant me? You wanted me to do something? Oh, no, you couldn't have been serious. There are lots of other people more qualified, more time. I had a really busy life. You really didn't mean me, did you? And to realize that, yes, indeed, that in that moment I was being called to care for people with HIV. And so I made a very radical decision. I just kind of said, yes, okay, I'll do this. I don't know what this means, and I don't know what it's going to entail, and I don't know what the cost is going to be to me personally, and I don't have the faintest idea where to begin, and where do you start tackling the greatest humanitarian crisis that the world has ever seen? How do you begin to tackle the crisis, as I've since learned, not just 15 million children orphaned. There are 138 million, according to UNICEF, children who are orphaned in our world due to all those causes. How do you begin to touch those problems? And the minute I said yes, the minute I decided to embrace the pain of people that I didn't know and might never even meet, my heart broke into a million pieces. I felt like that my heart had been taken in front of, if you've ever seen in a meat grinder in a meat market, where they take a piece of steak and they put it through a grinder and they grind it, and what comes out on the other side is ground meat. It's ground hamburger. I felt like my heart went in as a steak and came out as a hamburger. My heart was in more pieces than I knew what to do with. And so I just began to learn to read because I knew nothing. But I had become a very seriously disturbed person. And one of the questions that people always ask me when they hear my story is they say, why HIV? Of all the things that you could be involved in, all the things that you could be an advocate for. And as Chanel and Amy said, I have had cancer twice. I've had breast cancer and melanoma. And it would be very logical and very reasonable for me to become an advocate for people with cancer. Or why not save the whales? List all kinds of things. Why are you an advocate for people with HIV? And because that is such a profound question that I've had to answer in my own life, I really want to share it with you because there are 5 reasons I think that every person needs to be concerned about people who are HIV positive. If you're taking notes, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. You can write it on your hand. But there are at least 5 reasons, and particularly reasons that I think the faith community, you may be part of a faith community already, a church or another religion. You're part of some faith community. And I believe every faith community, this is something that they have to grapple with. So I want to tell you why I think that it's so critical that we do.